Mushoku Tensei has finally finished airing, so you know what that means. It's time to review Mushoku Tensei Season 1. This is the good, bad, and great Mushoku Tensei edition. So, from a bird's eye view, this is how this series works. I tell you the good, bad, and great in that order. It's pretty straightforward, to say the least. I find this a great exercise as a YouTuber who critiques anime, so in the comments below, share your good, bad, and great for Mushoku Tensei, starting with the good. With this anime, I had a lot of trouble coming up with something that's good that I could write about. Not because there isn't any, but because so many aspects of this anime are so perfectly done that I feel you could make a solid argument for everything I'm about to say as something you'd put in the great segment of this video. With that being said, it goes without saying that the pacing of Mushoku Tensei is pretty much on point. Never once in this series did I feel that it didn't earn its 24-minute runtime, and that's thanks to the perfect pacing. Even small touches like having the opening song constantly evolving along with its visuals, integrating the music into each episode that it acts more as a way to set up the episode. In other words, the openings in Mushoku Tensei are a part of the episode and story. You can't really skip them, and for that fact, I think it's one of the best, most subtle touches you don't even notice. As well, I think a part of the pacing has to do with the way the series is written from a base level. They are always fleshing out something in an episode. Even the slower episodes with less movement in the plot often are episodes designed to flesh out the world of Mushoku Tensei. In this regard, Mushoku Tensei feels more like a breathing world than it does just another isekai fantasy setting akin to, well, literally every other isekai I've personally seen out today. I'm sure there are others that do this, and I would love to see those examples in the comments below, but Mushoku Tensei in my eyes sets the bar for what is a well fleshed out fantasy setting. For example, many of the places they're traveling to have their own customs, lore, and culture than other places. One location may have a thriving bounty hunter economy, others may simply be a village for a race of people who never really age, and some may just be a big city full of different kinds of people, all creating a melting pot of culture, species, and dynamics. There is always something to learn, something to behold, and something to admire in the world of Mushoku Tensei, and for that reason, I think the series is set apart from its contemporaries. In that light, it should be mentioned that fans of this series were able to translate and decipher an entirely original language made specifically to further flesh out the world. Obviously, this is something often done in many other types of media, but when they're using an original language, well, that just means that this series is just that much more legitimate. I like this because they're not just explaining it away using magic when we hear Japanese speakers. As well, there is more than one kind of language used throughout the series. As an example, many races use different languages, like when they go to Ghislaine's home village, and there, Eris, Rudy, and Ruijerd, through the arc of this series, go from speaking this broken language to being nearly decently fluent by the time the arc is finished. If that's not dedication to your craft, I do not know what is. If you're a regular viewer on my channel, most will know where I'm headed with this. There isn't a lot of bad to talk about with this series at all, except one talking point. I disliked the perverted and degenerate humor in this anime and felt 80% of the time it ruined the immersion of the show, at least for me. Now, before I get any further, this is just me speaking personally. So, continuing, a big part of Rudy's personality is his immature side, though more problematic is his weird tendencies to be extremely perverted and downright problematic in the worst sense. One scene that I will use for example, and I didn't particularly enjoy, was when Rudy felt up a sleeping Eris. There was another scene later in the second half as well, which features Rudy putting underwear on his head, licking the inside of it, and being called an enemy of all women by a warrior whose outfit is literally just a bikini. This scene was so comically over the top that it made me have a hatred for Rudy's character and made me want to turn off the episode right then and there. Thankfully, this isn't isn't something that dominates Rudy's character, as they seemingly relegate it to certain episodes for the most part. And I do want to be clear, my issue isn't with fan service or sexuality. I liked that they showed some of the stuff they did, but you can't be surprised if someone thinks Ghislaine's top, or lack thereof, is a good part of her character design. Same with the Bikini Warrior later in the series, whose outfit has a flimsy justification at best, even if the underlying lore behind it is interesting as a concept. This series plays into many of the tropes and problems that many people don't like in isekai in general. And while I do give this series massive props for trying to tie these aspects of Rudy's personality into a long-form story, which does work, it's still, at the end of the day, immersion breaking at best, and at worst is just disgusting in regards to Rudy filling up Eris in an early episode, and just literally disgusting. Though I would make an argument that for most people watching the series, it doesn't matter, as Mushoku Tensei is a series like, for example, Monogatari, where it's not meant for a casual anime audience who don't have much anime under their belt to begin with. So if you think this is a great first anime for someone, think again, as I would mostly recommend this to someone who's at least seen a decent amount of anime and can tolerate some of its eccentricities. With all of that being said, this is the only form of criticism I could actually come up with for the entire anime. Everything else is practically perfect from my perspective, so let's just hop on over to the great part of this video. It's undeniable that there is one trait that stands among everything else in Mushoku Tensei that makes this series great, and that is its shades of gray character writing. From Rudy to Paul, sometimes the brilliance of these characters is that maybe you aren't supposed to love them as people per se. For example, when Paul cheats on his wife, Zenith, in one of the episodes. What comes out of this is rather compelling. Zenith has a tough decision to make, as leaving could split the family up. Zenith is pregnant, she's about to have another child, and so now is their maid, Lilia. Needless to say, this is an extremely complicated situation that has already caused a lot of trauma and hurt feelings. But surprisingly, it's Rudy who convinces his mother to keep the family together. The real story here, though, nobody likes Paul, and for pretty much the rest of the season, people who know his name only have awful things to say about him, even the ones that are awful themselves. It's pretty obvious that Paul is a terrible guy. That's undeniable. Well, interestingly enough, Paul is, dare I say, a good father, and shockingly, a half-decent person, despite his atrocious and disgusting actions. After the Mana disaster, Paul painstakingly provides for Norn, his second child, at the detriment to his own health to protect her, as they are all split up. Not only is his job as a parent still important to him to give Norn the best upbringing she can have in this situation, but Paul also goes further, using his credentials and experience as an adventurer to form a search party full of people to track down, and in some cases, rescue all of the missing people from Renoa Village. If you're familiar with an anime I'll be covering weekly next season, a little anime called Attack on Titan, you'll be familiar with this method of character development. The reality is that Paul did a bad thing, and he is a bad guy, but not totally a bad person. People's actions, despite how harsh to an extent, are never the full story of a person, and the story of Paul is simply this. Paul is a father who made a mistake, and he pays the consequences, rightfully so. I think it's rather beautiful and telling of a masterclass piece of writing that we, as an audience, can come to these conclusions so clearly through context and dialogue. Nothing is vague or subdued. All development is subtle and deliberate. Paul isn't the only example either. You have Rudy as well, who is interesting because his past makes him a legitimately bad person. Rudy, in his past life, was a pedophile, a shut-in, and a perennial online troll. In many ways, he's your typical Redditor or Twitter user, always negative, always on the prowl to cut someone else down to make himself feel better. He is someone who, unlike Paul, is one kind of without redemption for his past actions. Cheating is not pedophilia, and for the rest of his life, Rudy has to live with his actions and what he's done. Here's the cool part. How do you redeem someone that which is unredeemable? Before I answer this, I want to ask you guys to comment this down below because I'm curious to what you're going to say. So I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is you don't. Rudy in this series is, to me, someone I can hate and dislike, but at the same time want to root for to get better. Rudy was physically and mentally abused, assaulted, and then stripped naked, tied to the gate of his school. From there, he suffered severe psychological trauma, which made him a shut-in, and from there, his mental health would not get better as into his mid-30s, Rudy would never leave his house. Later, we come to find out this wasn't his fault and was a failure of the people around him to get him the help he needed when he couldn't do it himself due to his health. Rudy in his past life is a tragic character who fell into a life he probably was never meant for, despite his criminal actions later on. Rudy deserved better. Rudy in his new life would then go on to do terrible things even, like feeling up Eris and the other stuff I've already described in the bad section of this video. Rudy, time and time again throughout this series, falls back into many patterns and cycles that harken back to that of old Rudy. The beautiful part here is that constantly he is held back up and reinforced by his family and those around him. This is the missing key to Rudy, and thinking about it actually kind of gives me goosebumps and legitimately brings a tear to my eye because the message is beautiful. Rudy is a character that represents strength through family and relationships. Love him or hate him, it's all the end of the same for Rudy. Throughout 99% of the series, when he's struck down, it's always someone else who stirs him to rise in the end. Zenith and Paul, who will him on with love and understanding to step outside his home. Sylphie, to pursue relationships with other people and to pursue his love for education. Ghislaine, to mentor him under a watchful guiding eye. Eris, to be the one he loves and fights for, and Ruijerd to be there as another mentor and someone to support him every step of the way, protecting him when he cannot protect himself. Let's be real, without the relationships of his family, there is no possible redemption for Rudy. This is 99% of the time for Rudy, and that 1% comes from within when Eris leaves Rudy, bringing back all of the pain, acting as a final straw. Ruijerd and Eris, his support have left him, and he's now on his own once again and falling back into old patterns, remaining in his tent for days after Eris leaves him, not moving, not living. He's become the Rudy of old again. But one day, he drifts off into sleep, and he dreams about his mother Zenith, the only person missing from his family to not be found, his beloved mother. The one figure, the one person even in his previous life who never truly gave up on him is still out there, still in danger. The memory of him telling her she loves him wakes him from his dream and the nightmare of his previous life. He steps out of his tent with a new purpose, to find his mother. What's beautiful here is that Rudy made the final big step of redemption. It wasn't a person who helped him leave that tent, but Rudy as himself. Finally, Rudy can stand up on his own 2 feet and carry on with enough strength within himself to not give up this time. Rudy is healed, and through the good he was able to do, the bad actions and misjudgments of the past are just that, the past. And that's what makes Mushoku Tensei great. It's a redemption story for those who are perceived to be unredeemable. Don't just let me tell you what's good, bad, and great about Mushoku Tensei. Share yours down in the comments below and let me know what you think makes this show so special. While we wait for Mushoku Tensei Season 2, watch my recap of Attack on Titan Final Season Part 1 before Part 2 airs here in a couple weeks. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.